Allow me to introduce you to Shipwrecked 64, a video game enveloped in mystery. In universe, Shipwrecked is a platforming game developed by Cogware Games for the Nintendo 64 in 1997. This release would not come without controversy, however, as it would be quickly removed from store shelves following disturbing findings within the game files. Fast forward to 2022, where it would be restored and later posted online. If you were unaware, Shipwrecked was initially released to both GameJolt.com and itch.io, which is why there is a massive discrepancy between this video's release date and the date on which the game was posted. Though, to the surprise of individuals not closely following the development of Shipwrecked, the game would be completely overhauled and released to Steam, GameJolt, and itch on January 1st, 2024. This update would feature new character models, areas to explore, and many more secrets to uncover. Now, I am not the first to be invested in the many secrets that lie within Shipwrecked 64, as there have been many videos hunting and solving each and every mystery this game has to offer. But one avenue I've yet to see attention brought to are the interesting details that are normally concealed from the view of the player. Initially, I had gone into this expecting to find mostly nothing, but the more I explored, the more interesting and sometimes incredibly funny the finds became. Before we begin, I will make sure to include context for each area of the game to prevent anyone who has no clue what I'm yapping about from being completely confused, though the only way to get a complete grasp is to play the game yourself, link in the description. But without further ado, let's begin. First, let's start with the spawn region known as Nulla Terra. This island is comprised of 6 different locations: the beach, the hull, the park, the living quarters, the theater, and the town hall. This is considered Layer 1, and although I mentioned 6, there are potentially more than 20 different areas in total, 20 being the total I am currently aware of. So to be clear, this is a massive layer, but luckily for us, all 6 locations are loaded in at the same time, so things become easier. The introduction to this area is as follows. You are controlling a character named Bucky. Bucky and his friends have crashed onto the island, and now they have been kidnapped. It's up to you to help Bucky save his crew and make it out safely. Along with the already dangerous situation, there is also a volcano nearing eruption, so you have a very limited amount of time to save everyone. In order to save the team, you will need to find them and individually complete missions. So for Giovanni, you must keep ovens from burning food. For Olive, you must collect coconuts, and for Walter, you must retrieve his trapped boat. Expectedly, this area was the beginning of my search. Immediately, I found 2 things incredibly striking. Directly underneath the middlemost section of the beach lies a pulsating heart, which is the same heart you find nearing the end of the game. Now, I do not have an answer as to why there is a heart underneath spawn, but what I can say is deeper into the water, you will also find a swimming Bucky, which I can only presume is an inside joke pertaining to the fact that you cannot swim in-game, at least to my knowledge. Deciding to check out the living quarters, I was amused to find that character models from the previous build of Shipwrecked were placed under the respective locations for each of the characters, except Wolf being in 2 different areas, but that isn't important. While I was minding my own business, however, looking around, I was jump scared by this creature hidden in a very discreet location. Although I'm not completely sure who or what this is, I do know this was also featured in the previous version. Departing to the theater, I found something very confusing. To progress in finding the disturbing aspects of Shipwrecked, you will need to fail the missions of Giovanni, Olive, and Walter, which will individually unlock each of the 3 nearby doors. Something I always noticed but never considered was how only 2 out of the 3 doors have a sign placed nearby written in beaver scratch. The one next to Olive has the text Layer 2, Room 1. Walter says Layer 2, Room 3, but there is no sign for Giovanni. Taking this information into account, you may be surprised to find that the sign exists, underground, just behind this door, showing the text Layer 2, Room 2. Now that I've checked the playable vicinity, I decided to head further out, and to my surprise, there were a few things of note here. First, I found a platform where 10 olives walk around perpetually. This will play a role later, so hold out for that. Second, I found an area that I cannot confirm personally if it is in fact out of bounds due to there being a door, but in the case that it is, there are 3 signs you can read here. The roof sign text reads, "Get back down from there." And the 2 nearby signs have text that reads, "This is my job we're talking about," and "I hope you rot." Now, okay, it's time to address the elephant in the room. The massive house looming ominously in the distance. After reaching this house and making your way inside, you will find small text that reads, "There is no house in the ocean," which I believe is a reference to the Monument Mythos, an analog horror series on YouTube. This house will also be appearing later, so hold out for that as well. To ensure this video doesn't last longer than it needs to, I'm only going to show some of the more interesting finds from the remaining 14 sub-areas, before continuing throughout the layers. After heading to the town hall and speaking with Wolf, you are tasked with retrieving pieces of your destroyed boat so that he can repair it. Setting off to gather your boat pieces, you are being hunted down by a Wendigo-esque creature in an area that has a look and feel different to anything we've seen so far. Here, the only things of note I had found were a giant version of the same Wendigo, alongside a strange maze of sorts. Once again, I cannot personally confirm or deny if this is out of bounds, as I have yet to find any confirmation, but it is still interesting to see and speculate about nonetheless. A quick intermission, this is editor GLoWhNo here, so due to the abundance of random structures located out of bounds that had zero explanation, I decided to take a look at the old version of Shipwrecked, the one that originally came out, and to my surprise, all of the areas I had mentioned were here, specifically the strange structure above spawn and the maze near the horns minigame. Now, I did watch gameplay of Shipwrecked back when it first came out, so I'm not completely sure how I forgot about these areas. They're very significant, but at least I know now, so I thought I'd add that. Okay, back to the video. Digging further into what I would consider the most interesting area of this layer, I spoke to Stumbler and entered the caves. For this mission, you are tasked with searching for and providing Stumbler jars of paint, as well as making sure his canvas doesn't fall over. The reason being, well, Stumbler doesn't necessarily have hands, or most of his arms for that matter, so you can see why it would be tricky keeping it standing. Now, looking around, I found absolutely nothing interesting, but this area is imperative in allowing us to reach the debug room. If you happen to stumble upon the aptly named video Debug Room on the channel PT Cogware, you will see the rough location in which you will need to jump and interact. This will open an invisible door and lead you to the location. Here, you will find an array of things including, but not limited to, doors, a keypad, boat pieces, and instructional signs. Taking a look behind the confines of this room, you will find the Vandal just coexisting. This is also, to my knowledge, the first time the game confirms the true identity of this NPC, as prior to this, he is referred to as JD, opposed to the Vandal. But, of course, you could probably just compare the two and arrive at that conclusion anyway. Vandal aside, back inside of the main area, there are a few doors that take you to different areas. One allows you to exit the debug room, while the others take you to the menu map, Waltzer's Waterway, and the cave. Within these, I found 2 specific details, one being a smiley face in the waterway, and the husk floating in the abyss outside of the cave. Now I suppose I should explain who the husk is. Well, to keep it brief, throughout the game you may notice a still creature staring at you just barely in view. Playing through the game, you eventually learn more about this entity, but I'm going to save that portion for the end of the video. As you progress through the game, you will notice the husk takes more and more interest in you until eventually you come face to face at the very end of the game. Before we get too far off topic, since we will be covering this later, I wanted to mention an interesting find that, similar to some of the others in this list, I'm not completely sure if it is out of bounds. But just in case if it is, I will mention it here. Going back to Stumbler, the first thing you learn about him, regardless if you speak to him or not, is that he is missing his arms. What you may not know are the whereabouts of such arms. Well, if you decide to take the camera underneath the room you are in, you will find a building of sorts under the water. Entering this room, lo and behold, here is one of Stumbler's missing arms. Now, okay, this is cool and all, but where's the other one? Well, for that, we will need to take a trip to the second layer. Welcome to Layer 2, the barrier between you and the more disturbing content this game has to offer. If you didn't know, to get access to Layer 2, you will first need the 1997 version of the game, given to you after beating the clean version. Once complete, you will then need to fail each and every one of your friends' assignments. After a short intermission showing depictions of their deaths, you will then have full unrestricted access to the second layer. The second layer is made up of 3 unique entrances, with a handful of sub-areas. Each of these rooms will eventually lead you to one smaller series of rooms, taking you to Layer 3. Before I begin searching out of bounds, to be clear, you can see this is where Stumbler's other arm is, just resting on a plate out in the open. Though this isn't incredibly important, I still think it's worth showing just in case you somehow didn't know. Anyway, since each of these starting areas are character-based, I decided to check underneath the map to see if there were any hidden models of the respective NPCs similar to earlier. Interestingly, not only had I managed to find Giovanni, Olive, and Walter, but I also noticed a giant T-posing wolf model, and my personal favorite, the piece of dev text with an arrow saying idiot pointed at Olive. Now to get back on track, let's take a look at one specific character area, one which held the most interesting of the secrets. After you lose Walter's mission and brutally murder him, you gain access to Layer 2, Room 3. This area consists of a large body of water, a few rooms, and, strangely enough, some sort of prison holding a couple of wolves. Playing through this area, I always noticed how strange it is that you can't speak to these NPCs, you're only able to watch as they can never escape. Interested in this the most, I decided to break in and speak to them, and to my surprise, they had dialogue. Before I show you what they say, there is also a wolf at the very top of the building. This one says, "Welcome to the waterway. We rented this house just to get away. That island is a number, you know. It's so nice to catch a break." The NPCs below say, "How did you get here? Go away. Hello?" And my personal favorite, "Piss off." After moving on from the imprisoned animals, I wanted to take a look around the inside of the walls and underneath the water. Interestingly, I found a wolf sitting in a boat just under the map. There's also a room nearby with the mounted head of the Wendigo, which if you happen to phase through the wall, you will reveal the rest of his body. Something I'd like to point out is to progress through this area, you must press a button at the end of a bridge, which will bring 3 pillars out of the water. You will then need to boat to these pillars and perform a series of well-timed jumps to reach a door. This door will take you inside of the pillar, and after making your way down, you will eventually reach a smaller pillar with wolf atop it. What you may not know, however, is that not only is this pillar reused for this section, but the other 2 pillars are on both sides too, even though you never see them in-game. Now, before we officially depart to Layer 3, heading further outside of the immediate area, you will find a distant wooden platform. Approaching this wooden platform, you will realize that there is a second Bucky that completely mirrors your movement. Taking this into consideration, I can only imagine this was used for Bucky's reflection, but I'm not a game dev, so I have no idea. If I'm wrong, I'd love to be corrected in the comments because I am interested to know. Here we are at Layer 3. This is where everything officially begins to kick off, the game finally showing its true colors more explicitly. Once you arrive at the new location, you will eventually be confronted with 3 locked doors. These doors open depending on which characters you take the path of, so if you decide to head through Giovanni's door for instance, and continue down that route, one of the doors will be unlocked, same with the rest of the cast. The rooms will eventually give you access to a button, opening a series of gates that are preventing you from entering the plaza, which is where the meat of this layer lies. Before we get too far ahead of ourselves, there are a couple of things of note I found within this building section. If you decide to take the path of Olive, you should immediately be made aware of a piece of art on the wall depicting a drowned Olive, which, you guessed it, is exactly how she died. Similar to earlier when I covered the Wendigo, you can descend and find the remaining portion of the image, and I must say, it is incredibly disturbing. Now, aside from a box located beneath the map with several husks staring at a door and a few instances of dev text, one being the answer to a code and the other being the dev reminding themselves to make more puzzles for layer 3, there isn't much to see here, so let's depart to the plaza. So, visibly, this is an incredibly large area, so it would make sense that a good chunk of assets can be found floating in the void. For instance, a grand majority of objects that appear after progressing can be found scattered everywhere, such as batteries, a button that will be teleported to the TV in the basement, and the video that appears on the large TVs around the plaza. An interesting location to look at has to be the Dweller area, a white structure that holds a twisted variant of Giovanni, Olive, and Walter. When any of these characters teleport to the plaza, they will leave a model that appears when they phase out of existence at the location until it replaces them when they are ready to come back. While I'm still here, take a look at some more dev text that can be found, discussing the functionality of this button, and 2 personal reminders, one to make the code 1997 work on all of the gold TVs, and the other saying to finish task 2 next. Now we have advanced to the 4th layer. After exiting the plaza, you will reach a strange location with a familiar face looming in the distance. This is a demo designed to showcase the amazingly innovative technology Cogware has kindly cooked up for us. This area is comprised of 4 different locations, each with its own design and purpose. Though these areas are interesting to look at from the inside, let's head to the outside to get a better view. Now, first of all, there isn't much out here, but I need to bring this up because I was shocked when I found this 18 million foot tall elevator shaft that you only experience less than 3 seconds of, and you don't even go up. Keep this in mind because there are many more instances of this happening, and it is so funny. But for now, let's enter this elevator and descend to the next floor. As you can see, this is what I presume to be the headquarters of Cogware Games, or at least a representation of it. Here you will find this horrific little guy known as Blot, the creation of Rex, who is the individual responsible for designing Bucky. Taking a step back from the building and getting far away from this creature, you will see that instead of a giant elevator shaft, it has been replaced by an equally tall cable. Getting back on topic, let's show off the cool stuff. Relatively hidden out of view, you will find a massive computer broadcasting your whereabouts, as well as 2 signs. The first sign directly beside the TV states, "I see you, fucker," and the next one that is higher up states, "I hate your smile, Bucky." As far as I could tell, this is everything of note to find in this area, so now let's once again take a trip down the elevator into the sewers. Okay, immediately, you know exactly what I'm going to show you. I cannot believe how massive this fucking cable is. This has gotten out of hand. Just when I thought it couldn't get more insane, I was instantaneously corrected by the sheer size of this thing. Okay, getting back on track, let me show you what there is to find. First of all, this area introduces you to a new dweller, Bucky. Up until this point, you have been able to easily hide away from the dwellers, though this time around, if Bucky catches you attempting to hide, he will destroy the object you are inside of, killing you in the process. You can see Bucky in all of his glory by visiting the 2nd installment of the Dweller area. Here, you will also find a button that will humorously take you to an unlisted video titled Peyton, showcasing what appears to be a stream clip of a developer known as Mr. Manatee. Aside from this, I found another full model of the Wendigo and more dev text. Put a chest here, by the way, and 9396, which is the passcode to the keypad below. Welcome to the final layer of Shipwrecked 64. After all of this time, as I mentioned earlier, the husk has made it very obvious that it has taken an interest in you. This all comes to a head when you are confronted. Given an offer you cannot refuse, a game of hide and seek where you must hunt down the husk 10 times, avoiding the embodiments of your past mistakes in order to receive information. Now, as much as I would love to discuss this portion of the game and its incredibly deep lore, that's not what I'm here for. Instead, it's time to revisit some of the locations I mentioned at the beginning of the video. If you remember, I discussed 2 secrets that would become important later. This is later. First, let's check out what I'm going to call Olive Island. As you can see, each of the olives that were previously mobile are now completely still. You may not know based off of this view alone, but they are staring at you. Next, the giant house that was previously far in the distance. As you can now see, the house is missing from view. That is, until you head to the living quarters and take a swim. There is no house in the ocean. There is only the house in your head. Wrapping up the few remaining secrets, I found that Walter was suddenly missing from the old model crew. I'm not completely sure why this is, but if anyone has any information, please let me know. While I was covering Layer 1, I decided to refrain from mentioning a hidden door at spawn. This door was located near one of the volcanoes. The reason I held back was due to the inability to interact with it. Well, I decided to save the best secret for last. If you decide to enter this floating door, you will be greeted with the scariest secret this game has to offer. A white screen. I truly apologize if you were watching this in the dark, because when I found this, I couldn't sleep for days. Okay, bit aside, I want to thank you for sticking around to this portion of the video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like down below, share with your friends, and maybe if you feel up to it, subscribe to the channel. If you haven't yet played Shipwrecked, I heavily recommend checking it out. Even though I covered a great number of strange finds, there are plenty more to discover within the boundaries. But this video has gone on far too long, so I'll end it right here. See ya. Now, a quick thank you to our amazing channel members for supporting me each and every month. And another thank you to Anita Cube, Floofy Gooberzak, and Funsum for purchasing the GLoWhNo consumer membership tier.